lessons. What is public relations and the principles of public relations? We could discuss 2 lessons yesterday session, and today we are going to deal with block 2. In this block, we have again 2 units, that is 2 lessons about models and history of public relations. Models of public relations is lesson number 3, and history of public relations would be lesson number 4. The evolution of public relations practice exists from the colonial period to mid 20th century. Of course, in India, this is not the period. It existed along with our culture. But as far as public relations as a profession, identified and recognized and being practiced as a profession, it is from mid 20th century. The first actual use of the phrase public relations was made by President of USA Thomas Jefferson in 1807. Of course, in India, we started using the word public relations from the year 1941. Prior to that, there were many names like press agentry, publicity, propaganda, public communication, public information, and many other terms. But in this unit number 3, it explains Indian public relations models, also Western public relations models, public information models, the two-way asymmetric model of public relations, and the two-way symmetrical model of public relations. This is in unit number 3, that is lesson number 3. And lesson number 4, that deals with the PR in mythology. Public relations, we have traced the public relations practice into the mythology, Indian mythology. And then with the Emperor Ashoka, the father of public information, and during the Mughal period, and also the Raja Ram Mohan Rai, the Sangha Samskarta, the social reformer. He started social communication. And we'll also looking at the era of publicity in British India, both under the company, East India Company, and also under British rule of India. Thereafter, the Gandhian era of public communication and the present age of public relations, including that of global public relations. Now, in public relations models, we'll be discussing about, again, the propaganda model, that is in ancient India, the publicity or public information model, British India, Gandhian era of public communication, public relations model in independent India, along with Western PR models like press agentry or publicity model, press or public information model, two-way asymmetric model, and two-way symmetrical model, and the application of these models in the practice of public relations. During the course of history, many public relations models evolved, but Indian public relations model, starting from the propaganda to independent Indian public relations with a global perspective, is being seen in this lesson. Indian public relations model has its uniqueness, and for each period in history, we have traces of public relations practice. Western PR models, of course, evolved through, as I told you, press agentry, public information models, symmetrical, asymmetric models. Ultimately, what is important is the application of these models to fit into specific scenarios of practice. And this is what we are going to discuss in this thing. Now, again, let me tell you, the 5 broad public relations models in relation to the Indian context are, number 1, the state of propaganda. This is called a propaganda model. It is from the year 1500 BC, not AD, 1500 BC to the end of East India Company rule in 1858, immediately after Sipai's mutiny. And then comes the era of publicity, that is publicity oblique public information model. Whenever I say publicity and public information model, there is no concept of two-way flow of information. It is only one-way flow, one-way communication. Therefore, it is publicity and public information model. This is the British India rule from 1858 to 1947 till we got independence. Then again, a period has been earmarked in public relations practice is that of Gandhian public communication model from 1919 to 1947. The year in which Gandhi returned from South Africa and started participating in Indian freedom movement till we got independence in 1947. Then the age of public relations, two-way and symmetrical and asymmetric models is independent India from 1947, from the day we got independence till 1991. 1991 is the year in which economic reforms were introduced into India, making it global under the prime ministership of P.V. Narasimha Rao. This is a very important period, 1947 to 1991. This is the period in which public relations practice has cherished. And then the Indian public relations model with global perspectives, that is global public relations. Because after the LPG, that is liberalization, privatization, and globalization, part of economic reforms introduced in the year 1991 by P.V. Narasimha Rao government. Now let us look into the models one by one. The propaganda model existed in the ancient India. It is very difficult to determine the origins of public relations in India because it existed with humanity. From the day people started living in a society, the public relations started. Even before that, the gestures of public relations are courtesies, common sense, and common etiquette. Public relations, therefore, is said to be as old as human civilization. In Ramayana, if you remember, there used to be a character called Bhadrudu, who used to report to Rama about popular feelings, the public opinion, the feelings of the people, and their perceptions, what they are thinking. This is a system of collecting, gathering the information and mending the communication according to the perceptions, responses, and reactions of the people. This is a public relations exercise. It existed even during the days of Rama. And Bhadrudu played the role of a public relations practitioner. Employing professional bards to sing the glory of the king was an ancient custom in India. So people were employed to tell, to sing, to narrate the administration, the rulings, the kindness of the rules, regulations of the country, everything the people used to tell like songs. They used to sing like the achievements of the government, the achievements of the ruler, the plans and programs of the ruler in the forms of songs. They are called professional bards. They sing, they go into the people and then sing the things that are being the state of affairs. Then if you look at during the period of Kalhanudu, Raj Tarangani was the system. It also belongs to the same genre. The great, thereafter, the great religious teachers like Jain Mahavira and Buddha of Gautama, Siddhartha, and then Shankaracharya, the Hindu religious leader, and then the next religion, that is Sikhism, founded by Nanak, and then Kabir, were all master communicators. They were called Hori communicators. They preached and to the common people, and they found it as easy to communicate with the people if the people are informed better. The rock edicts, the rock instructions written in local languages, local dialects for easy communication. Though Pali was the official language, sometimes Sanskrit was the official language, but the edicts used to be in the local language so that people can understand. When only people can understand, then only they can react, respond. Otherwise, there will not be response. There will not be any kind of communication. If communication ought to be two-way, the communication must be understood by the listeners or the audience. From this angle, Gautama Buddha has sent his eldest son Mahinda, and his eldest daughter Sangamitra as the ambassadors of Buddhism. They were sent to different countries in the East and the Central East. If you look at the Indus Valley civilization, Indus Valley civilization falls between 3000 to 1500 BC. It is generally agreed the Indus Valley civilization flourished at that point of time. An unique contribution during this time was the introduction of seals, mudras made of terracotta and stone. Terracotta means a kind of special clay. The mudras, the seals, official seals, were made of terracotta. It communicates the date, it communicates the regime, it communicates the period, it communicates the authority of the ruler. This is all communication. Some of the seals were engraved with figures, while others were pictorial script. These seals depicted religious beliefs, trademarks, while some depicted the animals and the birds and animals of the sea and all that. This is all communication about the king that ruled that part of the world. And then it is called information to the public. In propaganda model, the purpose is to promote a point of view, an ideology of the teller among the public with some motive. A propaganda must have a motive. It is not an objective motive, but a subjective motive. It is always with the intention that I need to be told, I should be publicized. The ruler should be publicized, or the government must be publicized, or the king must be publicized. It was the only purpose in the propaganda. No, there is no question of feedback, of course. The feedback, the reactions are taken into consideration while repeating the communication. As I told you, Mahavira, Jain Mahavira belonging to the Jain, who founded Jainism, and Buddha, Gautama, who founded Buddhism, and then Adi Shankara, who revived Hinduism, and then Guru Nanak, who founded Sikhism. All these religious leaders, they have propagated their faiths. This is called propaganda. Mahavira traveled the country barefoot and bareheaded throughout the country. He spread his message in his ascetic style. Buddha also set forth the noble truths. He also started wandering into the areas where he wanted to preach. He sent his children to other countries. Similarly, the Vedanta Advaita of Shankaracharya also, he established 4 mutts in all the 4 areas of the country, and then he revived Hinduism as such. Then came the model of publicity. We call this period as publicity model or public information model, not public relations model. It happens especially during the British India rule. When the Mughal Empire became weak and due to infighting, the Robert Clive, the leader of East India Company, defeated Suraj-ud-Dawla of Bengal at Battle of Plassey. Thereafter, he took control of the entire India. Prior to Delhi, Calcutta used to be the headquarters of India, national capital of India. Later, Christian missionaries came into the picture, and they had their own methods of propaganda. They propagated their religion while extending the health, education, and employment to the people. Raja Ram Mohan Rai, the well-known social reformer and social communication model, he excelled in social communication by targeting societal ills. You know what Raja Ram Mohan Rai did? He abolished child marriage, he encouraged widow marriage, and certain other social evils, and Sati Sahagamanam. Those ills were existing in Indian continent. That was the practice. But then this social reformer fought against these social evils, and through the governor generals and viceroys ruling the India, then through them he got them abolished. Publicity is nothing but giving out the information about a product. Propaganda is one way with motives. Publicity is also giving out of information about a product or a person or a company for publicizing or advertising or for promoting the issue or the idea or the service or the good or about the person or about the institution or about the government. This is called publicity or public information. Placing information in a medium of communication, be it radio or television or newspaper or any other thing, placing information in a medium of communication to attract public's attention is also called publicity. As I told you yesterday, advertising is to be paid for, whereas publicity can be publicized even without paying for. Supposing you have a function, an event in your organization, and some important person, maybe minister, chief minister, or governor, or any other VIP is attending that event, naturally you will be inviting the press and naturally it gets reported into the media of communication, be it newspaper, radio, or television. This is also called the publicity. The period, now we are talking about models. The period of publicity or public information in India began in 1858, immediately after Sipai's mutiny, because the East India Company rule ended and the British India started ruling in India after the mutiny. The British government ruled the India through viceroys till we attained freedom in 1947. You all know this. The East India Company always kept citizens in the dark as they refrained from giving out any information till Sipai's mutiny. Afterwards, they started giving importance to the news reporters, to the scribes, to the public, to the people. Then the system was public be damned. After that, it started public be informed. Gradually, see, there was a transition from public be damned to public be informed. It means the government started recognizing the importance of the citizen, of the people. Gradually, as the British government took charge and public information got a shot in the arm, it got importance. It means the information flow commenced. The information flow commenced. The British no longer viewed India as a trade zone. Earlier, British ruled Ravi Astaminchani, British Samrajyam. From east to west, all countries used to be the colonies of the Britishers, the dominions of the Britishers. They ruled the entire world. They kept every country under their control. Many of them do not have independence, and one after the other, they freed themselves. It is only because of the information flow. It is only because of the information. As long as the people were kept, they were kept under the control of the British. When the information exploded, people started asking for rights and responsibilities and freedom. Then countries got the independence. Gradually, the British government took charge and the information flow started. The Britishers started looking at the countries as the collectives of the people, not as the trade zones. The viceroys made sure that the journalists received sufficient information, official information regularly. Especially the Viceroy Lord Canning founded Editor's Room in 1858 in Kolkata. By the time James Augustine Hick, Bengal Gazette, was already there. He was also an official of the British India. He resigned and came out and started Hickey Gazette or Bengal Gazette. So the Viceroy had no other go except to founding an editor's room in 1858 in Kolkata. And then few official papers were printed and pasted on notice boards. It is the era of public information we are talking, because public be informed. And then such steps promoted goodwill between the British government and the people. So Lord Lawrence, another viceroy, in 1864, revived the idea of starting a newspaper for publicity purpose, but somehow the idea has been dropped. In 1876, Viceroy Lord Lytton wanted to better the relationship with the media and the public of India, and he appointed Robert Knight as consultant to the government for matters relating to the press. He suggested the establishment of Press Bureau for developing rapport with the newspapers. This Press Bureau later became Press Information Bureau of India. It is a major organization which gives out information of the government to the media, PIB. So first press commissioner was appointed in 1880. It is not 1780, it is 1880. Then came the Gandhian era of public communication. Public relations played an active role in Indian independence. Public communication system and Indian independence movement were closely linked. Most freedom fighters who turned journalists used their newspaper as communication vehicles to carry the message of freedom movement and to mobilize public opinion against the British. Because we started asking for independent India, and then newspapers started by the politicians. They assumed the role of journalists. They became the editors of the newspapers, just like Gandhi and Rajaram Mohan Rai and all others. Other tools adopted were folk arts, word of mouth, etc., etc. Not only newspapers, other tools of communication, traditional art forms were also used for communicating with the people, dissemination of information. Mahatma Gandhi, as you all know, he has intensified the freedom movement after he returned from South Africa in the year 1919. His entry he gave a boost to journalism and public relations in India. Gandhi, after returning in, yeah, of course, he returned in 1917. He made a survey of entire India from north to south and east to west, and then he started freedom movement in 1919. He went into the several parts of India as per the advice of Gopal Krishna Gokhale. This is all history. Do or Die, Quit India movement, Swadeshi, Purna Swaraj, Dandi March. These are all the truth force, Satyagraha kind of things. And the interesting thing is his theory of communication is called ITM theory of communication. Gandhian ITM theory of communication is important, a point to be remembered in Indian communication, in Indian public relations practice. ITM theory of Gandhi says that I stands for interpersonal media. Interpersonal media means he used to organize prayer meetings, public meetings, Padayatra, where the leaders can get in contact, physical contact, personal contact, eye contact with the people on and the people agitating for the freedom of the country. Then T stands for traditional folk media. Traditional folk media then existing were bhajans, kirtans, music, and all forms of rural art media, and then traditional art forms of the countryside of India existing then. There were bhajans, kirtans, harikathas, burakathas, Chapala Katha, Dumkal Katha, many more art forms, traditional art forms were there. Gandhi used to encourage these things so that the communication can get across the people by the performers. Then M represents for mass media such as newspapers existing then. Mass medium of communication, of course, television and radio were not, television came only in 1959. Radio, of course, came in 1929. But then before that, there used to be only newspapers, print media, and M represents for mass media, that is only newspaper. So Gandhian ITM theory means I stands for interpersonal media through prayers, public meetings, padayatras, and T stands for traditional folk art forms, bhajans, kirtanas, harikathas, and all these things. And then M represents for mass media, that is newspapers. Then came the public relations model independent India. When India became independent, the government felt the need of keeping the citizens well informed. Public be damned to, public be informed to, public be well informed. This is the third stage about its policies and programs. As a result, the Ministry of Information and Broadcasting was established in 1947 with the mandate to inform, to educate, to motivate, and to entertain the people as active partners in the democratic and development process of the country. The media units of Ministry of Information and Broadcasting, such as PIB, Press Information Bureau, Publications Division, Films Division, Directorate of Advertising and Visual Publicity, and many more, about 17 Government of India media units are there, including radio, television, and all these things, were strengthened to disseminate public information. Dissemination means giving out. As such, the concept of publicity began in India during British rule and graduated into the publicity or public information has graduated into public relations in independent India. This is to be noted. Thus began the era of public relations in independent India. Multinational companies operating in India for several years felt the need to communicate with Indian people more meaningfully. By then, multinationals have set in India. They started their operations, their productions. Even before that also, they were there as in the form of East India Company and their ancillaries. But because after the independence, India became independent and many multinational companies started operating in India. In order to adjust their corporate policies commensurate with Indian conditions to the democratic milieu, these companies increasingly turned to public relations. Among the Indian giants were Tatas, had already set up public relations department in Mumbai in 1943. the first company that has started public relations, internal public relations department in India, Tatas. So if you look at the Tatas, they built a kind of image for themselves in the minds of the people by their PR activities, by their CSR activities. The public sector has, however, made a significant contribution to the birth, nurturing, growth of professionalism in public relations. Public relations is a practice. Public relations is a profession. Public relations in its true sense started with public sector units, PSUs, public sector undertakings, public enterprises that came after independence in India, like HMT, BHEL, Bhilai Steel Plant, followed by NTPC, Indian Oil Corporation, and other oil corporations, VSNL, NHPC, ONGC, and whatnot. These are all only a few. Many people are there. Bodies like Public Sector, Public Relations Forum, like SCOPE, have played a notable role in professionalization of PR discipline. At the apex level, we have in India a national body called Public Relations Society of India. It was set up in 1958. There used to be two forms, one in Mumbai, two chapters, one in Mumbai, the other one is Kolkata. They were merged in 1968 to make Public Relations Society of India. It's the National Association for Professional Development of Public Relations Practitioners and Communication Specialists. There can be a short question on what is Public Relations Society of India. It seeks to promote public relations as an integral function of the management. So public relations is a management function. As I told you yesterday, it is a specialized management function. It is a strategic management function. There are, however, certain areas where PR has yet to make a full dent. These include strengthening programs for training in this field, publication of literature on PR by seasoned practitioners and academics, case studies on PRC. These are all the requirements in order to promote public relations profession further. Then global public relations. Public relations model of independent India entered into global arena in 1991, as I told you, with the advent of LPG, liberalization, privatization, and globalization. As part of economic reforms in the year 1991, under the regime of the then Prime Minister of India, Dr. Sri P.V. Narasimha Rao. As a result, corporate companies, corporate public relations got a lift to meet the growing competitive marketing environment. And as such, Indian public relations is now passing through a public relations model with global perspective. Now, think globally and act locally is the slogan of public relations. Now, let us look at the Western PR models. Western PR models, it started with the name press agentry. Agentry is nothing but agency. Press agent, an agent of press, an agent of media, an agent of maybe of newspaper, an agent of maybe of any radio, whatever it is. That is called press agentry or publicity model. Publicity is not always two-way communication. It is very rarely two-way communication, but mostly it is one-way communication. Even the purpose of press agentry is also that. During the 19th century, press agents labored to create news. They create news to influence public opinion. It is to not giving out the full details and establishing a mutual understanding and then gaining their favorable public opinion. But it is a shortcut of creating the news to influence public opinion in their favor. There may be mollified intentions. Therefore, it is called only one-way communication. It is only a press agentry. The purpose of communication is to only communicate. It is not to take the feedback or the reaction or response from the people and then amend the communication itself. It is just one way. It is intentional. It has got a motive. Many a time, it is an ill motive. So a press agent does not conduct surveys or research. They just want to manipulate the behavior of the people by repeatedly telling what they wanted to tell, not what people wanted to tell. So accuracy and credibility are not priorities. No, you don't research, you don't survey, you don't talk to the people. It is only giving out the information about the government, about the organization, about the party, or about the person for which the press agent is working. This is a one-way communication, as I told you, from the press agents to their publics that uses a persuasion and manipulation to influence behavior of the audience. It is not mutual understanding. It is not seeking favorable public opinion. It is not persuasion and motivation with good motive. It is always with ill motive. This method is employed by practitioners for one-way communication to sell their products or to sell their services or to sell their ideas without quantitative analysis of the results. Results they don't want to see. They want to tell the information, thereby achieve their targets. Then public information model. From press agentry model or publicity model to public information models. Government departments, government started believing the people, start feeling the responsibility of informing the people. They developed a public information model in the second stage of growth of public relations in the Western India in the early 20th century. The purpose is to give out information through newspapers based on accurate information about a cause, product, or service. Now people started giving accurate information. Earlier, false information or their own information. Now governments felt to give out at least exact information. This model is still a one-way communication because there is no response, no feedback. Then they move away from half-truths and outright falsehoods. That is only press agentry, publicity model, to the public information is the from the stage of giving half-truths and to the giving exact information, and somehow the ethical practices are inbuilt into this system. Although this model still does not have any methods for quantitative analysis of the results, practitioners are slightly more inclined to gather feedback from their audiences. This model is used mostly by government agencies, military units, and for not-for-profit organizations, that is NGOs, non-governmental organizations. The next model of Western public relations, the group of models is two-way asymmetric model. Feedback has become more important to practitioners, but the aim is not to improve organizational practices, but rather to influence attitudes of their audience. This is still another move towards two-way process of communication. Although this model advocates two-way communication, practitioners are hardly thinking about balanced communication. There is no balance in communication. It means it is only one-way communication, feed forward. They have not given importance, that much of information, that much of importance to the feedback. It is only feed forward, no feedback mechanism. The power is rested with the sender, whose intention is to persuade the receiver to accept the support the sender's organization, products, or services. The next model in Western PR models is two-way symmetric model. During the 1960s, when the US was confronted with Vietnam War protests, civil rights movement, and environmental movement, this model was widely used because the governments felt that the public opinion is of paramount importance. And then this is probably the most ethical method of all models of public relations. The aim of this model is a dialogue. It is not a monologue. So earlier it was only a monologue. Only sender is to send, only communicator is to communicate, the speaker is to speak, not bothering about the response, reaction, or feedback. Unlike two-way asymmetric model, this model is symmetric as a two-way communication process. Now, what is the application of these models? In press agentry public model, the application is to create a positive image of their brand in the minds of target audience, to influence potential customers by simply imposing ideas. This is in the press agentry model. So we are looking at the application to enhance the flow of information, and using theater, music companies, film companies, all these people have practiced this model. That is press agentry model. If you look at the public information model, it is by circulating relevant and meaningful information among the targeted audience. And then it revolves around one-way communication where information primarily flows from sender to the receiver, that is from the organization or the PR experts to the targeted audience. be they employees, stakeholders, employees, whoever they are. Government, not-for-profit organizations started practicing this public information model. Then in two-way asymmetric model, the application is communication between both the parties. Communication is somewhat not balanced. In this type of model, public relations position their organization and brand on the whole in the minds of the targeted publics. Much of their manpower and resources are not utilized to find the reaction. Marketing and advertising agencies use this model of two-way asymmetric model. Advertising even today is an asymmetric model. And then if you look at the application of the two-way asymmetrical model, it enhances an organization's reputation among the targeted audience. It is a two-way communication, benefits both the sender and the receiver, communicator and the community, source and the destination. Two-way communication to position their brand among end users. Conflicts and misunderstandings are resolved through mutual discussion. The feedback from stakeholders and targeted audience are also taken into consideration. It is a professional usage of public relations. So, if you summarize the lesson number 3, that is 5 broad public relations models in relation to the Indian context have been discussed now. That is propaganda model, publicity and public information model, Gandhian era of public communication, public relations model, independent India with global perspective. That is as far as India is concerned against the Indian backdrop. If you look at the Western PR models, James Brunig and Hunt of ESA, they have given the models like press agentry model, then public information model, two-way asymmetrical and two-way symmetric model. Now let us move on to the next lesson, that is history of Indian public relations. In this lesson, we'll be looking at public relations in mythology, about sage Narada, the state of propaganda, the Lord Buddha, the light of Asia, Buddhism and techniques of propaganda, Emperor Ashoka, who is revered as the father of public information, Mughal rule system of information through newsletters and the information gathering procedures, and the social communicator and the social reformer, Raja Ram Mohan Rai, and the era of publicity during British rule of India, First World War, how and when publicity boards have been established, and then Second World War, war publicity gained the momentum, then Gandhian era of public communication, independent India, the age of public relations, Ministry of Information and Broadcasting set up as one of the ministries, new industrial policy in 1991. So 1991 is economic reforms, LPG, alongside the economic reforms, the new industrial policy 1956, 1991, global public relations. So if you look at you may be thinking that why repeated, because in the beginning there will be an introduction, and gradually each term, each phrase, each item will be expanded in the lessons ahead. So accordingly we are moving. And public relations in mythology, if you look at it, sage Narada used to be remembered. He was a great writer and author of several standard texts, including Narada Smriti. Narada's principle is the creating troubles, creating rift, and then solving them so that everybody will understand. Bahujana Hitaya, Bahujana Sukhaya, for the welfare and happiness of the people at large. Loka Kalyanam, universal peace and prosperity was his idea. In order to promote that, he used to create rifts. He used to create some kind of riddles. He used to create something like dispute, and then tries to resolve. He is not a troublemonger. He is a troubleshooter. The troublemonger creates trouble, but troubleshooter solves the trouble. But he acted as both troublemonger and troubleshooter, so that people, including gods, can realize what actually the truth and facts are. The state of propaganda, Lord Buddha, the light of Asia. So we are looking into the period of history of how propaganda was there. Public relations in India grew out of propaganda only. which was the practice both in ancient and medieval India. An important feature of the state of propaganda was the religious leaders. As I told you yesterday, propaganda is always associated with three things. One is religious propaganda, the other one is war propaganda, and the third one is political propaganda, where there cannot be truth. There will be almost the falsehood only. The people try to tell only one side, not the other side. But then so the Westerners used the propaganda for their personal gains, but the what has been told from the other side. So, like Mahavira of Jainism, Buddha of Buddhism, Shankaracharya, who revived Hinduism, and then Guru Nanak, who founded Sikhism, all these people, they made use of propaganda techniques to attract the people first towards their respective religions, because literacy was very minimal in those days. People only need to be told, to be explained. There was less scope for the feedback also at that point of time. Similarly, the kings in ancient India, like Guptas and Mauryas, the Emperor Ashoka, and then the Mughals in the medieval India made their all-out efforts to preserve their rule, by Buddhism and techniques of propaganda, if you look at them, in the propaganda model of PR communication, the purpose is to promote an ideology, rule among the public with motives. Gautama Buddha belongs to this category. He influenced the Indian mind to absorb and assimilate Buddhism. It was a sort of propaganda of his own faith, that is Buddhism. Gautama Buddha used appropriate communication methods to change the society. You know, what was ahimsa? Himsa to ahimsa, the Buddha started focusing on this particular point called ahimsa. Buddha set forth four noble truths. That is, life is full of dukkha, pain. Pain is caused by a constant craving, asking for sensual pleasures and material gains. Then agony will cease when a person is free from desires. Wants undakudu. There should not be any needs. Greed undakudu, dukkham undakudu. Then eightfold path for cessation of pain. He has given an eightfold path for ceasing the pain, namely right faith, right endeavor, right speech, right conduct, right livelihood, right action. Everything is right, nothing is wrong. Buddhists, who were the very first propagators of religion, spread their faith by traveling all over the world. Thereafter, Jesus also did the same thing. His disciples did the same thing. Even the Shankaracharya, he took to himself to traveling, and even Mahatma Gandhi also did the same thing, traveled far and wide propagating their message. The Buddha is called the awakened. He is also called the Sakya Muni because he hails from the noble family called Sakya, the sage of Sakya. So he is also called the Sakya Muni. Whatever is the name, he established Buddhism and practiced and preached what he wanted to preach. That is foremost ahimsa. According to the canon, Buddha's birthplace, as you all know, Lumbini, the bordering with Nepal, and then he got enlightenment at Buddha Gaya under a peepal tree, and then his first sermon was at Sarnath. He spent his remaining life in traveling, teaching, and spreading Buddhism. He had 3 sons and 2 daughters. He ordained his first son and the first daughter, first son Mahinda and first daughter Sanghamitra. He ordained them into Buddhism and he deputed them to different countries around India. The bhikshu or bhikkhu in Sanskrit, bhikshu in Pali, is a fully ordained means converted, ordained male Buddhist monastic, and female monastics are called, this is all history, bhikkhunis. The holy orders in Buddhism connect back to central roots of Buddhism, the original followers of Buddha. So this is all about Buddhism, he propagated his message, his idea of ahimsa. Then the Emperor Ashoka. Emperor Ashoka is called as father of public information because of his edicts, rock edicts. King Ashoka is the third monarch of the Indian Mauryan dynasty, first ancient king who introduced public information. He came to be regarded as one of the most exemplary rulers in world history. Some British historians said, amidst the tens and thousands of names of monarchs that crowd the columns of history of India, the name Ashoka shines and shines almost alone a star. This is the credit given to the rule and the personality of Emperor Ashoka. Because what are all the welfare measures Ashoka has taken? We in the childhood we used to listen that he constructed the chowl trees. He planted edicts engraved, stupas, silasasanas, and all these things. These edicts inscribed on rocks and pillars proclaim the Ashoka's reforms in administration and policies and programs and promulgated his advice to his subjects. Subjects are nothing but peoples or Samanta kings. The present rendering of these edicts based on earlier translations offers us insights into a powerful and capable ruler's attempt to establish an empire on the foundation of righteousness and right kind of information dissemination. Ashoka's edicts are found everywhere throughout the country, including his own Magadha kingdom. And teachings of Buddhist monks, it is very clear that Buddhism was the most influential force in Ashoka's life. Therefore, Emperor Ashoka got converted into Buddhism. When emperor converts into a particular religion, naturally his subjects also will get converted into the same religion. This is how religions have started flourishing throughout the world. It is only for this reason that because the entire Roman kingdom has converted into Christianity, the pre-existing Roman Catholicism has been converted into Christianity. Therefore, the religion of Christians is more in number in the world than any other religions. This is how the emperors adopt their religion and then propagate. And if you look at Mughal emperor's system of dissemination of information or communication, the great Mughal emperors, 6 of them ruled India for about 200 years. They were Babur, Humayun, Akbar, Jahangir, Shah Jahan, and Aurangzeb. The period from 1526 to 1707 saw the era of communication flourishing. So communication flourished. The Mughals appointed 3 categories of news reporters or news writers. They are called Wakia Navis. Wakia Navis means a public news writer, a public news reporter, a correspondent. Kufia Navis means a secret news reader. He writes letters only to the king and he writes only about the secrets, what is happening in the kingdom. So the first one is Wakia Navis, is a public news writer, and this information is about the management, about the kingdom to the people. And the second one is the feedback mechanism. All the secrets were gathered and then reported to the king. That is called the Kufia Navis. Kufi means secrecy. Kufia Navis. And then the Harkara, oral informers. Because only those who are literates, who can write, they were appointed as Wakia Navis and the Kufia Navis. And then who cannot write but can only talk and influence the people, they were appointed as Harkaras, oral informers, for the purpose of regular bilateral communication of information between the central government of Mughals and their regents and also the subjects. This method of conveying information improved considerably during Mughal rule. In addition to this, trained carrier pigeons, horse riders, tunnel runners, and drummers were also used fort to fort, from one fort to other fort, and from post to post, from one military post to another military post, communication for transmitting distress or happiness or emergency messages. Whatever is the message, these people used to carry the information. Different variations of drum beatings denoted different messages. You can perceive that for marriage there will be a different beat, for a death for a different beat, for merrymaking there is a different beat. In those days of Mughal empire, they used to adopt different kinds of drum beating to convey the message. Even today, you have a tom-tom man in the village, but the tom-tom will be the same, but the different message will be the different. So that is was one of the that is one of the media of communication in the days that have gone by, and also in the present days. Jaroka Darshan is another form of dissemination and gathering communication introduced by the Mughal emperors, especially during the period of Emperor Akbar. So this is called window audience. Even today, meet the collector, talk to your SP, meet your CM. These are all the things have origin in the window audience, that is Jaroka Darshan. The Emperor Akbar, who was a benevolent king, supposed to be a benevolent king, had introduced a unique system of interaction with publics called Jaroka Darshan. The window audience, he will sit at the window, he will be visible to the people. People will be coming to the window in a line and then give out and then submit their grievances and get them redressed or solved. The window was a part of king's palace where king used to sit on one side of the window while public on the other side of the window facing the king, which is otherwise known as face-to-face two-way communication process. They only had to submit their problems and they get resolved. That is called Xerox. And another system of attending to the people and addressing their problems is bell of justice. Jahangir, the son of Emperor Akbar, had introduced another innovative communication system called bell of justice. There will be a big bell, and people, whoever is affected or offended, they can come to that bell and ring that bell so that somebody will attend, or even king will order somebody to attend to the problem. This was the modes of communication during the Mughal period. And if you look at the Raja Ram Mohan Rai's social communication, the father of Indian language journalism, he is called. He started newspapers to create awareness on the social evils of Hindu society and to counter the propaganda of Christian missionaries against Hinduism. On one side, he started 3 newspapers. One is Sambad Kaumudi, a Bengali weekly in Bengali in 1821, Mirat ul Akbar, a Persian weekly in 1821 that used to be in Persian language, and then Brahmin Sevadi, an English and Bengali bilingual magazine in 1821. Through all these publications, he mobilized public opinion. Public opinion is very, very important in the practice of public relations, not just public reaction, not just public response or anything feedback. Public opinion is of utmost importance. It has been practiced right from the days of Lord Rama, even today, if at all public relations is to be practiced. The journals of Raja Ram Mohan Rai enlightened people on social evils and thus became known. He is known as father of social communication in India. He extremely studied Christianity and other religions. He also visited foreign countries and came to know the cultures and the systems of living in all these countries so that he could find out what are the evil systems, evil practices in Hinduism. And then he started focusing on them and got them removed, like the Sati Sahagamanam, and the child marriage and widow marriage. All these things are the outcome of the efforts made by Raja Ram Mohan Rai, and he got them done through the Governor General of the East India Company and then later by the Viceroys. Then the era of publicity is the history of public relations in British India. The second stage in the growth of Indian public relations is the era of publicity. Publicity is the giving out of information, repeatedly being told about a product or a person or a company for advertising or promotional purposes. Placing information in a medium to attract public's attention is called publicity. The period of public information in India began in 1858, yes, immediately after Sipai's mutiny, with the end of East India Company rule. After the mutiny, the British government abolished the rule, and then British government took over the charge of India until 1947. the era of publicity during the Britishers period has continued. The East India Company always kept the citizens in the dark as they refrained from giving out information. But British India started giving importance to the subjects, to the people, and they stopped seeking in India as a colony and India as their trade zone. Gradually, as the British government took charge, public information got a shot in the arm and formulation and information flow commenced. The British no longer viewed India as such, but they started giving importance. The Viceroy Lord Canning founded Editor's Room, as we already discussed in the previous unit. The First World War led to establishment of publicity boards. The government of India, initially reluctant to have a regular official publicity setup to deal with the public, realized the importance during the First World War period of 1914-1918. Extensive propaganda and war publicity were required to secure greater response and support for the war efforts, both from newspapers and general public. The government therefore set up a number of provincial publicity. Provincial means statewide provincial publicity boards throughout the country with a central publicity board in Shimla, not Delhi. First publicity board was established immediately after the World War I at Shimla. This could be perhaps called as the first organized public information disseminating agency established in 1914 as part of war propaganda. See, religious propaganda, war propaganda, political propaganda. Propaganda does mean a one-way communication, not regarding the response, reaction, and feedback and the opinion of the public. This one thing you'll have to keep in mind. Then tours were organized for journalists to battlefields. The government of India set up the Central Bureau of Information in 1919. In 1914, they established publicity boards. In 1919, they established the Central Bureau of Information, later came to be known as Press Information Bureau, which is now called the PIB. The duty of the Bureau was to extract the most critical statements which appeared in newspapers and bring them to the notice of the departments for comments and rejoinders. And at the same time, the information about the government, its programs, and its policies, they convert into press releases and give it out to the different kinds of media houses, be it newspaper, radio, or television. This is the duty of the Public Press Information Bureau. Then Second World War, war publicity. In 1939, Second World War broke out, in which India was involved. India was among the early countries, not the enemy countries. Enemy countries were led by Germany. Because of that, all countries, including America, USA, India, and the enemies were Germany and Japan. So Berlin attack was organized, and then Germany was defeated. But then a lot of damages, lot of loss to the human mortality, loss of property, loss and damage and crippling of the economy, industry, and whatnot. So in order to overcome that damage, in order to inform the public and gain confidence again, these countries, the victorious countries, have started war publicity against the enemy countries, that is, the countries led by Germany. The Bureau of Public Information and All India Radio were placed under a new organization called Directorate of Information and Broadcasting, the Ministry of Information and Broadcasting. Similar. In the history of Indian information system in 1941, government used the word public relations. So whereas the word public relations was first used in 1807 in USA by Thomas Jefferson, but in India, for the first time, it was used in 1941 in the history of Indian information system by the government of India. The name of Bureau of Public Information was changed, of course, to Press Information Bureau. The war with Japan ended on 14th August 1945, but the official publicity machinery for war propaganda continued even after the war ended. The war publicity structure changed its stand from war information to public information for the welfare of the people. In those days, whenever a movie started in a theater, There used to be a war reel. Now it is newsreel. Earlier it used to be war reel because government wanted to tell the people about what happened in the war, what has damaged, what are all the things that have been damaged. It is only in order to gain the favorable public opinion of the people so that they can be charged with the taxes, rates, and rents. And then the amount, the people will believe that, and then they start paying the taxes. And with that money, the government machinery will move on. So this is the intention of the governments in war publicity. Now look into the history of Gandhian era of public communication. In earlier lesson also we dealt with briefly, now elaborately. Mahatma Gandhi was a great apostle of peace. So it started with Buddha and Jesus Christ. Even Mahatma Gandhi also started believing in peace. Insatiable soul, ever in quest of the truth, fighter for minority rights in South Africa, came to India in 1917 and started his activities after touring the entire India at the advice of Gopalakrishna Gokhale, and then started effectively involving himself in Indian freedom movement from the year 1919 onwards. All these were possible by the ability of this art of communication and his passion for ethical values in journalism. He is the person drawing the essence from the preachings of the Buddha and the Jesus Christ. He started using the ethical values in inducing the ethical values both in journalism, because he himself was a journalist. He ran 3 newspapers, and he also started the ethics in the practice of public relations. This is how Indian public relations are ethical public relations. This is how Indian public relations, being ethical, do not accept propaganda and also do not practice lobbying, where in lobbying and propaganda, there is one-way communication. There is no truth involvement. There is no ethics and moralities into those two practices of communicating with the public. Now, Mahatma Gandhi is an ethical practitioner of journalism, an ethical practitioner of public relations. He practiced public relations by contacting with the people through various modes of communication, by personal contact, by organizing influencers, by journalism, by his writings, by writing to the letters to the editors and all that. Even he started writing to the viceroys and to the British rulers at the England and all these things. This is all communication for the public, for the welfare of the public, for the good of the public. So whatever communication is two-way and it is meant for the objectivity and it is mutually helpful, then that communication shall be a public relations communication. Otherwise, if it is one way, it ought to be either advertisement or propaganda or lobbying or even publicity. Though publicity and advertising are acceptable in the practice of public relations, lobbying and propaganda are not acceptable as it is. While explaining the objective of journalism, Gandhi said 3 important things and practiced in his newspapers and even speeches. A newspaper should be neither an ally nor an adversary to the government, but a constructive critic. This is the saying of Mahatma Gandhi. I repeat, a media or newspaper, neither an ally nor an adversary to the government. Ally means friend. A newspaper should not be a friend of the government. If he makes friendship and he becomes friend, then he will not write negative about the government. That is a danger to the humanity. He should be neither an ally nor an adversary. No, he should not be an enemy of the government. Otherwise, whatever government is doing, good thing, he will not report it because he is already an enemy to the government. That should not be the practice of journalism. That should not be the practice of public relations. Therefore, he said, a media or a newspaper or any medium of communication should neither be an ally nor an adversary of the government, but a constructive critic. So the objectivity is involved in reporting, in media business, in journalism business, in public relations practice. Gandhi said 3 important things and practiced it in his newspaper and even in his speeches. One of the objectives of journalism is to understand popular feelings and give expression to them and to expose popular defects. James Madison, one of the presidents of the United States of America, a popular government without a means of obtaining popular information is either a prologue to farce or a tragedy or both. It means a popular government means a government elected by the population, that is called a popular government, not the famous government. Popular does not mean famous. A popular government means a democratic government, a government elected by the population of the country or the territory. And popular information means the information meant for the public to be given to the public. He said, a popular government without obtaining the procedure of obtaining popular information is a prologue to farce or a tragedy or both. Farce means a comedy. Tragedy means a tragedy. So with a popular government ought to have popular information shared with the population of the country. This is the meaning and substance of the what he has said. To reach this Herculean task, Gandhi adopted Satyagraha. So he wanted to tell something to the people, popular information, and he wanted to oppose the policies of the British government. Then he took to Satyagraha. Satyagraha means truth force without violence. That is called non-violence. So you sit in silence. That is one kind of Satyagraha. You stand alone or you stand before a thing in resentment. That is expression of resentment. That is called, you don't damage anything. You don't cause any kind of hindrance to any kind of system. But if you force the truth, that will take care of everything. That is called Satyagraha. A passive resistance, it is called. And he used the word Ramarajya. So it is only an utopian idea that Gandhiji wished. Ramarajya must be established in the India. That was his idea. And it should happen only through truth force, that is Satyagraha, and non-violent, passive resistance, resentment. Then Satyagraha, to be explained further, it is Gandhi's secular method of resolving conflicts, conflict resolution methodology. Gandhi drew Satyagraha from his deeply held religious and philosophical belief, which was not exclusively Hindu. I told you, this truth force is not exclusive to Hindu because he used to claim that he is a Christian, he is a Muslim, he is a Parsi, he is a Zoroastrian, he is a Hindu, and he is everything. The reason is that he studied extensively all these religions and came to the conclusion that truth force is the only force which human beings can exhibit in order to solve the things. He acknowledged his debt not only to Bhagavad Gita and the Upanishad, but to the Sermon of the Mount, it means Bible, and the writings of the Tolstoy and Thoreau, also the religious scriptures of many other religions. Gandhian journalism emerged from the philosophy and values practiced and propagated by Gandhi in his lifetime through his publications, namely Indian Opinion, Young India, Navajivan. Navajivan and Gujarat. Navajivan was in Gujarati. All other things were in English. These are all the publications he used to publish as its own editor. Gandhi used his 4 newspapers to propagate his views through persuasion, discussion, and debate. This is the practice of public relations. Motivated, to be persuaded, to be informed, and seek goodwill and favorable public opinion towards the communicator. That is maybe individual, maybe an organization, maybe a country, maybe a government, maybe a political party. Gandhi started his journalistic foray, of course, in South Africa with Indian Opinion on 4th June 1903 with Manus Sukla Najar as editor, but he came to India in 1917, started participating deeply in Indian freedom movement. The intention behind the newspaper was to give the Indians a weekly roundup of news and to educate them in sanitation and hygiene. Alongside freedom struggle, he propagated sanitation and hygiene because that is more important. The people ought to be healthy in order to fight with something, with somebody. As soon as he returned from South Africa, of course, he started all these newspapers and started involving himself very heavily in freedom movement. Practicing ethics in journalism was a main factor that transformed an ordinary Mohandas Karamchand Gandhi into Mahatma Gandhi that we all know. Almost all Gandhi's writings had aimed at moral transformation of the individual while reinforcing moral conduct in him. As a development journalist, Gandhi felt, what is development journalism? What is other journalism? Writing positive news, writing good things, giving them objectively is called development journalism. What is the journalism that we are doing is sensational journalism, faithful dog journalism, from independent journalism to pet dog journalism. Now it is yellow journalism, sensationalization of journalism, giving angles to the news. Everything you give angle, then it is you draw the attention of the people somehow, be it good or bad, you doesn't matter, but you want to give it. You wanted to enhance the circulation of the newspaper. You wanted to improve the TRP of electronic channel. This is the purpose of the present day media. The journalism or public relations started as a service first, and then it transmitted into an industry. Now it is a business. Whatever is the field of activity related to humans, now earlier they were started as service, converted into industry, and then now the present stage is commercialized business. Everything is a business model. Mahatma Gandhi proved himself as a mass communicator by his strong build of character, reasonable and logical thinking, and ability to rouse emotions and desirable sentiments. Then using influencers. Who is an influencer? Somebody appointed on behalf of the communicator to influence the people. So influencing influencer, these days it is very common. So what Mahatma Gandhi did was, he used the influencers, mostly the sarpanch, the administrative head of the village. He started contacting with them, and through them, he told because sarpanch is happened to be sarpanch supposed to be a literate man, an educated man, an opinion leader, he himself, because sarpanch himself is an opinion leader. He leads the opinion. Under him, there will be many information dependents. He is the information leader, opinion leader, and there will be a lot of, all the villages will be his own dependents. They are called information dependents. Therefore, Gandhiji caught hold of these sarpanches, the administrative heads of each village, or any important person. If the sarpanch is illiterate, then he would get his things done. He would communicate what he wanted to communicate through these influencers, called the people elected or selected, either sarpanch or any person who is literate, who can communicate. And he also used writing letters to all the editors. And through his letters only he could change many things, because he was growing old. He could not move everywhere. Of course, 241 kilometers Dandi March was the longest thing organized. It is one of the campaigns. That march itself is a campaign. If you look from the public relations perspective, it is a campaign. So he used to communicate with the people through letters to the editor format. So his writings, apart from 4 journals he has been publishing, writing, editing, he also wrote letters to the editor, both inside in-country papers and up-country papers. Up-country magazines, up-country journals are the journals belonging to the other countries but operating in India. They are called up-country, as you know. But those media houses that belong to India, also the up-country magazines or journals and newspapers, he used to write his opinion in the letters to edit column, so that the educate will get educated, and in turn they will influence their information dependent, that is general public. So before commencing in March, Gandhiji on March 2, 1930 addressed before, Dandi March. Dandi is a place where salt was being produced in the Gujarati seashore. Addressed a historic letter to the Viceroy before starting the Dandi March. In it, he described the ruination of the country under British rule and gave notice of his. He also, because he is a lawyer himself, through the letter he gave a notice, advance intimation, notice to his intention to launch a civil disobedience movement by symbolically breaking the salt tax law, which in his opinion was the most iniquitous of all from the poor man's standpoint. British used to tax everything: the cotton, the jute, the indigo, the salt. These are all the agricultural produce. British used to tax arbitrarily. So salt being the minimum, the least thing, Gandhi resisted this, and then he started Dandi Marchi. And before going to Dandi Marchi, he communicated his intention of going on march, going on resentment, So going on for civil disobedience, he communicated, and then he went on a march through the villages, and he addressed the people everywhere. That is a form of communication. It's ITM theory, Gandhian ITM theory, interpersonal theory. That itself was a campaign, a long march of 241 kilometers from his Sabarmati ashram to Dandi, a village where salt gets produced. So mass movements, three mass movements of Mahatma Gandhi were the best campaigns where public communication and public relations were involved. As a measure to gain independence for the country, Mahatma Gandhi launched three major mass movements as per the record. They were non-cooperation movement 1919, civil disobedience movement 1930, Quit India movement 1942. Other things apart, these are all the main mass movements where mass people were involved in masses. Gandhiji, in tune with the Indian environment, made use of traditional and modern. Traditional means interpersonal meetings, prayers, bhajans, and all that. And mass means writing letters to the media, writing publishing his own journals, all the 4 journals. These media included interpersonal media such as prayer meetings, dialogues, public meetings, traditional media like bhajans, kirtanas, folk art forms, and modern media such as newspapers form part of the ITM theory of Gandhi. Mahatma Gandhi invited foreign media also to cover Dandi March. The process sums up the concept of Gandhian era of communication. This is the period 1919 to till 1942 or till 1947. Though he was not there, this is called as Gandhian era of communication. The communication does mean, because the communication is the essential ingredient of public relations practice, we study this communication in public relations study. Independent India, the age of public relations. The 4th stage is the evolution of Indian public relations in the age of public relations in India. The era, some of the features of the new environment are the emergence of parliament and the state legislatures elected for the first time on the basis of adult franchise. Adult franchise means whoever gets 18 years age, whoever gets the right to vote is called adult franchise. And through public opinion, that is through vote, the first parliament has been elected on the basis of adult franchise or general elections. So similarly, simultaneously, the state legislatures have also come up. So they are called representative bodies. They are the rule-making bodies. Then adoption by the government of industrial policy resolutions, 1948, 5-year plans, then latest being 1991, along with the economic reforms. In the background of these factors, both government and business organizations had to adopt conscious and deliberate policies of public relations. Every government department got the public relations wing. Every public sector enterprise, public sector undertaking, both at central and state level, they started creating the PR departments and started staffing the departments with qualified people, qualified both in journalism, qualified both in public relations and management and all these faculties. The Ministry of Information and Broadcasting is an important milestone in the history of communication and public relations in India. Ministry of Information and Broadcasting is the highest authority responsible for maintaining rules and regulations in the area of broadcasting, films and mass media in India. It plays a very key role in proper propagation of knowledge through press, radio, films, television, and other modes of communication. Ministry of I&B maintains a balance between commercial aspect and mass interest while offering services to the people. The Ministry of Information Broadcasting offers excellent services to the mass through various modes of communication. The ministry has made certain directives. The department works for the development of film industry. So the media of the Government of India media units under the Ministry of Information, important being New Media Wing, Publications Division, Registrar of Newspapers for India. Kindly remember, Registrar of Newspapers for India, of and for, kindly remember. The Bureau of Outreach and Communication, this is called BOC. 3 departments, 3 Government of India media units were merged into BOC. Earlier, DAVP, DFP were there. They were merged into Bureau of Outreach and Communication, Films Division, Photo Division, Press Information Bureau. All the media, all these Government of India media units act as public information dissemination agencies. They disseminate, that is, give out information to all public policies, on all public policies aimed at socio-economic development. Now, if you look at public sector public relations, India opted for a mixed economy. Mixed economy, public and private partnership. It is not entirely capitalistic. It is a mixed economy. Therefore, it opted because it suits the India better. Public sector, however, was conceived as pro-choice of the government. This guiding factor led to the passage of Industrial Policy Resolution, as I told you, in 1948, and then again 1956, and then 1991. These are all the three major industrial policies. And through these major industrial policies, major industries, both from outside and also within India, have been established by Government of India, and they needed public relations wings to disseminate information. A decision at the top governmental level was taken around that time. That means 1948 and 56, that all central public sector enterprises, CPSEs, you have central public sector enterprises, also you have state public sector enterprises. For example, in Telangana, you have about 56, and in central public sector, because we don't know, many of them have been closed, and now the number approximately is 250. They all have public relations departments internally, headed by a professional. It was also the public relations sector chiefs that, for informing and motivating people, every public sector undertaking under the central government will have to bring out a journal for employee communication. Journal, again, you know, a journal is meant for both for internal consumption and also for external. Internal house journal and external house journal, you know about it. With the growth of public sector undertakings, there emerged public sector public relations. And all public relations unit in central public sector undertakings are being manned by qualified PR professionals. What is the qualification for becoming a PR professional? Generally, it is a degree in journalism or mass communication with 5 years experience. It is a usual thing. Also, a degree or diploma or master's in public relations or advertising or any other related area of activity. Then another milestone for the emergence of public relations in India is nationalization of banks. Prior to emergency, the banks were owned by private persons and companies. They used to lend loans only to those influenced people, elite class of the people, because the recovery of money is easy for the banks. Now, for agricultural operations, seasonal agricultural operations and farm activities, banks used to decline giving the loans. Then government of India, under the Prime Ministership of Indira Gandhi, she has nationalized all the banks and made them and imposed a compulsion that all must be, whoever is eligible must be sanctioned with loans. Not only that, she also encouraged rural banking system. So earlier, the banks were concentrated in only urban areas, major cities and major towns. Now, under a compulsion, every bank should go to the rural areas and start rural banking, so that the farmers, the rights, the peasants, and the all other non-farm sector people, all agricultural enterprises, all agro-based industries, or agricultural related industries will get the loans on, and then RBI used to impose the restrictions as to, I think I am shouting. Is it audible now? Apart from the aforesaid major objectives, other reasons. Apart from the aforesaid, somebody said not audible. Apart from the aforesaid major objective, other reasons for the nationalization of banks were the minuscule number of bank branches at the time. So banks have expanded manifold. They started expanding their branches both in urban areas and also in the rural areas in the name of rural banking sector. Then came the general elections, and in 1952, general elections have been providing the PR industry the much needed exposure. Communication with political parties and between political parties and the people is of vital importance. Media also played a vital role in reaching out the masses. Intra-party communication is also important. So this is called what we today is political public relations, not Prashant Kishore kind of public relations. Prashant Kishore kind of public relations is a manipulator, is a maneuver, is a political strategist. Unnecessarily, we are giving it a name as political public relations practitioner. The practices of Prashant Kishore is not political public relations, but he is a strategist, a maneuver, and a political propagandist. Now, PR professional bodies again in 1958, the Public Relations Society of India was established. Earlier, two branches were there, independent, one at Kolkata, the other one at Mumbai. These two were merged in 1968 at the first International Public Relations Conference in India. And since then, it has been registered at Mumbai. Now it is headquartered in Delhi. Now it has about 30 chapters in each and every important city. You also have the other national bodies like Public Relations Council of India, which is a split, which is the outcome of the split within the Public Relations Society of India in the year 2013. The PRSI, the original body, was established in 1958, but PRCI came out of PRSI in the year 2013. It has some chapters throughout the country. And then there is another organization, national level organization called Association of Business Communicators of India. It was earlier Industrial Newspapers Guild. It has been renamed as ABCI, Association of Business Communicators of India. Its headquarters is Bombay. Public Relations Council of India headquarters is Bangalore. But the major organization, the original, the age-old organization, PRSI's headquarters is in Delhi. Another organization is called the Global Forum for Public Relations. Its headquarters is in Mount Abu, Rajasthan. So these are all the organizations at the apex level catering to the professional needs of the public relations practitioners of the country. New Industrial Policy 1991 has already touched upon. Major objectives of this India's new industrial policy are the liberalization, LPG, you can call it LPG, liberalization, privatization, and globalization. These are the economic reforms brought in by P.V. Narasimha Rao as Prime Minister, aided by the Manmohan Singh, the then Finance Minister. So this gave a fillip for the practice of public relations in the country because number of organizations, because the economy has been liberalized, economy has been privatized, economy has been globalized. There is a scope for everybody throughout the world coming into India, establishing their industries or service activities and their branches and whatnot. Because of economic growth, with the economy, there must be some kind of communication, information flow in and flow out, and it necessitated the improvement of public relations practice in the country. The broad objectives of new industrial policy of 1991, that is latest, are liberalizing the industry from the regulatory devices, enhancing support to small sectors, increasing competitiveness of industries, ensuring running of public enterprises, providing more incentives for industrialization, ensuring rapid industrial development. These are all the things. Then now the stage is global public relations. Because of the LPG policy, now it is globalization. The distance is not a problem at all these days because of the digitization, because of the internet connectivity. So global village is born when the distance died. It is an adage. So when distance died, it gave birth to global village. It means that there is no distance at all as far as communication is concerned, as far as public relations practice is concerned. Because now you see in social media where every individual has assumed the role of a journalist, a scribe. He is writing something and putting it across the social media. Sufficient if you have something in mind, sufficient if you have a handheld device like a smartphone in your hand, you can communicate anything. There is no regulation at all. It is very unruly, but very dangerous at the same time. I think it is time up for concluding. I am at the last part of. So global public relations has emerged because of all these things. What I suggest is, in each lesson, there is a model question paper. At the end of each lesson, you have some terminology. Kindly go through the terminology and try to, that is called glossary. Kindly go through the terminology, try to understand that. Go back and forth, search for the information, for the questions, and then you are through. You can at the same time gain knowledge of public relations. That is more important. And the secondary is passing through the examinations. Thank you for listening to me. I thank the university for giving me this opportunity. Next Saturday, let us discuss unit 5, 6, and 7 in block 3. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Thank you.